What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. What happens when your country's banks quietly whisper to the West, we, guys, are about to go under? No press conference, no warnings from the finance ministry, just a desperate leak to Bloomberg like a signal flare from the sinking ship. That is the Russian economy in 2025, rotting from the inside while trying to keep the lights on with drone factories and oil exports. The war in Ukraine might be the biggest open wound, but the infection has already spread through every artery of the country's economy. From military salaries fattened beyond reason, to mortgage bubbles inflated by delusion, to sushi bars expanding like it's back to 2012 again, everything seemed golden until it wasn't. Today's financial apocalypse does not come with loud crashes, it just creeps in quietly through overpriced loans, maxed out credit cards, closed kitchen factories, and suddenly empty shopping carts on Wildberries. And worst part about it all, it's all by design. This is not just some kind of miscalculation. The Central Bank of Russia representatives, especially its head Elvira Nabiulina, saw it a long time ago and warned us and everyone in the Kremlin that this is what is coming if things do not change. As expected, they haven't. Delusional numbers on paper looked good, but you can never trick cold math and accounting. If something is not there, it will not just magically appear out of nowhere. And so the financial wizards of Russia were tasked with maintaining the illusion for as long as possible, until they simply couldn't anymore. And now the costs are showing, the bill is due, but there is no one else left willing to pick up the check. The alarm is sounding, but no one is listening. Let's talk about the most recent state of the Russian economy, guys, in today's video. Let's teleport back to early 2020, just before the world collectively lost its mind. In Russia, the banking sector was cruising with debt liabilities a little over 50 trillion rubles, about $700 billion at that exchange rate. Things were not great, but at least they followed a predictable arc. Debt growth was more or less in step with GDP growth, and no one was asking existential questions about whether your kitchen tiles might cause a national default. But now, let's fast forward to the end of 2024. The debt has exploded to over 115 trillion rubles, approximately $1.5 trillion, more than double in under 4 years. That is not economic growth, that's an overdose. It's like trying to fix a broken leg with very prohibited substances, and sure, it might feel better for a while, but eventually you wake up in a coma in a place you don't even know where you are. And don't let anyone tell you it's normal. Debt should not outpace GDP by 4 times. But in Russia, where logic died a quiet death around the same time tanks rolled into Ukraine and the ruble became a monopoly token, the explosion of credit was framed as a national success story. That's right, somehow, mysteriously, the Russian propaganda was still able to spin the narrative and say that the nation becoming severely indebted is actually a good thing. Sorry guys, I don't even have an analogy here due to the ridiculousness of the situation. But anyways, people were encouraged, and even better say baited, into taking on more loans than ever. Cars, homes, renovations, business expenses, everything. Debt was suddenly patriotic. The message was clear: if you are not in debt, you're not doing your part, you're not helping Russia grow. And if you're too much in debt, well, you can always just erase it by signing a military contract. So there is literally no risk in trying. And with oil revenue still masking the rot, the government handed out subsidies like party favors. Soldiers received unimaginable bonuses and salaries. Contractors building bunkers in Belgrade were making 6 figures in dollars. If you had a hammer and pulse, you could cash in. This was the new get-rich-quick scheme in Russia. But debt is not magic, and bubbles do not just grow forever. The sushi boom, the kitchen expansion, the fantasy on infinite real estate, none of it grounded in economic reality. It was based on the expectation that salaries would climb into the stratosphere, that war would not touch your doorstep, and that the ruble would always hold up its value. Spoiler alert, as you guys know, none of that happened. So slowly but surely, one thing led to another, and a disastrous chain reaction has been initiated. Let's talk about it in our next chapter. Imagine a young family taking out a mortgage on a new apartment in Tula, courtesy of government-backed loan. They are told the monthly payment is manageable, the apartment is brand new, and property values are only going to rise. They borrow more than to install a dream kitchen. That boosts demand, so a kitchen manufacturer nearby triples its output and hires 20 more workers. Those workers, on the other hand, suddenly have disposable income and head to the city's new sushi bar, which is now so popular it is opening a second location with a bank loan. Everything looks like a growth, everyone is happy. On paper, it's a miracle, but underneath it is the simple as that must not work. Because this growth was not fueled by innovation or rising productivity, it was fueled by debt, subsidies, and war cash. Real incomes did not actually rise. They just look like they did for a hot minute. And now that the subsidies are drying up and the war machine is demanding more and more, the cracks are spreading like a wildfire. When that young family realizes their income is not rising, but their mortgage payment is still there, and they have already maxed out their credit cards, furnishing a dream kitchen they can no longer afford, well, they now just simply stop spending. The sushi bar's second location sits empty, the kitchen factory cannot sell its new models, so the employees get laid off, loans go unpaid, and it all comes crashing down. This is what is happening across Russia, not just in the headlines, but in the daily lives of millions of its people. The central bank tried to stop the bleeding by jacking the interest rates to 25%, effectively killing any chance of refinancing. But for some people, it was a matter of life and death to keep their businesses open and homes intact. So they were forced to take those 25% loans because they simply did not have a choice. And guess what? It brought even more money into the system. Now even the illusion of safety is gone. Defaults are rising, liquidity is drying up, and the banking sector is in quiet, panicked freefall. And when things get bad enough that bankers are leaking horror stories to Western media, not for propaganda but a desperate SOS signal, well, you guys know that the collapse has already begun. The Central Bank of Russia issued a final warning to the Kremlin, not directly of course, but still very visible and easy to understand. And I'm not saying that the Kremlin representatives do not see the forming collapse within, they most likely do. They just keep pretending it is not happening and hope for a miracle. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist, is the mindset. Let's hope something good happens and keep the war going, because ending the war will 100% serve as a trigger for financial collapse. So for now, war is good, war is peace. Sounds familiar, but counterintuitive at the same time, right? Let's try to figure out in our next chapter. You would think with the entire private sector imploding, the government would change course. But no. Instead of fixing the mess, they have decided to pour gasoline on it by doubling down on the only industry that's still growing. War. Let's break this down. Russia is currently bleeding approximately 1,000 working-age men a day into the military meat grinder, killed, wounded and missing. That's a mid-sized factory's workforce every single day. In 2 months, you would have lost more people than work in Moscow metro. And these are not just soldiers. There are welders, coders, delivery drivers, mechanics, people who are holding the real economy together. Now they're dead, missing, or just making $3,000 a month to sit in a Ukrainian trench. To replace the lost capacity, the Kremlin is throwing every ruble it can, print at a military-industrial complex. To replace the lost capacity, the Kremlin is throwing every ruble it can print at the military-industrial complex. New tank factories, new drone plants, new recruitment centers. This is not some kind of a side hustle. This is the only game left in town, and it's swallowing everything. The government has become both the producer and the customer of its only functioning industry. It's a closed loop of madness, it's not sustainable. The drones built today are launched tomorrow, destroyed the next day, and reordered again by the state next Friday. It is economic insanity disguised as strategic planning, and it only works as long as oil revenues hold, another industry that serves as the cracked already column supporting the crushing weight of immeasurable debt. But once those revenues dip, and they will because oil prices and everything is very cyclical, it all collapses. And then let's not also forget that every shell imported from North Korea or other countries must be paid for in full, upfront, no tops, no IOUs. The Soviet ammo stockpiles are gone, so now every bullet comes with a receipt. Meanwhile, even what remains of the civilian economy, companies are suffocating. E-commerce giants like Wildberries and Amazon are watching customers vanish, not because people suddenly hate online shopping, but because they're broke. Their wages are frozen, their cards are maxed out, and their fridges are full of reminders of bad financial decisions. Soldiers are the only ones and from lower and middle class who can still live financially relatively healthy. But I doubt they spend their days shopping online for flip-flops, keyboards and phone cases. They're just busy doing something else, trying to survive. That is the paradox Putin's Russia has put itself into. People with money have no way of spending it. People without money cannot spend what they do not have. And very rich people, oligarchs, prefer to spend their time and finances abroad. Absolutely chaotic situation if you ask me. So, what then happens next? Well, the regime's economic advisors still include a few technocrats who understand the very basics of supply and demand, like Economics 101. But they have about as much influence as a substitute teacher in a prison yard. The real decisions are made by men whose only qualifications is loyalty to Putin, saying yes to their superiors, and a shared fantasy that printing more money solves everything. You know, like kids in elementary school say, why we cannot just print more money and give it so everyone is rich? But it doesn't work like this. And when, not if, those technocrats get replaced by economic dinosaurs and clowns like Glaziev, who thinks that debt is not real and inflation is just Western conspiracy and propaganda, things will go downhill very fast. And people are being replaced by those clowns, so believe it is happening. Russia is not just creating a debt bubble, it's constructing a full-blown economic time bomb with the fuse already lit. Defense spending will keep climbing because the war will not stop, at least for now. Every day costs more than the one before. Last year they were launching approximately 50 drones per day. This year it's up to 500, more than 10 times, and that's not a typo. And while each drone might cost less than a tank, obviously, launching hundreds daily, it does add up. Tens of millions of dollars every 24 hours, burned, vaporized, gone. And guess what? The contract soldiers still demand 3 million rubles just to sign up, at least. That's not counting monthly pay, benefits, or death payouts if they even do these payouts. Recruitment is no longer just expensive, it is unsustainable. Eventually the government will be forced to start making impossible choices. Raise taxes, already happening, very quietly but does. Slash pensions, not yet but potentially it's coming. Issue more bonds, sure if somebody's still dumb enough to buy those war bonds. But no matter how creative they get, one truth remains. You cannot finance a forever war with an economy that's running on fumes. At some point, the machine will stall, and there will be no one left to push it until the nearest gas station. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, because we have another guest for our Think At It's Monday podcast. Guess when? On Monday. So if you don't to miss it, once again, please subscribe. If you want to see this interview/podcast in very early access, it's going to be on my Patreon. The link is down below. Amazing way to support our work here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. See you on Monday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the façade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.